We all know that Darth Sidious is one of, if not the most dangerous and powerful Sith Lord to have ever lived, one of the few Sith Lords to gain the coveted title as Emperor. But there was even a day where Darth Sidious did not exist. Not fully, but instead, a young Sheev Palpatine. So, what exactly happened the day that Sheev Palpatine officially died, and Darth Sidious was born? Greetings Acolytes, and welcome back to the Archives. Darth Sidious is a man known for his atrocities, a man involved in the deaths of billions. But even someone as vile as Sidious had to perform his first murder. The day where he fully gave himself to the dark side of the Force. The adolescent years of Sheev Palpatine is something that seems to be only brushed over in many cases. The most detailed resource we have is actually the only source we have, and the story of Palpatine's life prior to Sithhood comes in the form of the Darth Plagueis novel. Here, we get to witness the upbringing of the most powerful Sith in history through the eyes of his mentor. Plagueis had found the young Sidious in a place of distress and discomfort. Despite everything his wealthy family and father could give Sheev, they never truly gave him love. Because of this, Sheev was in a place of acting out. Taking advantage of the situation, Plagueis drove the young Palpatine into a craze, one that resulted in the murder of his entire family by his own hand. This is in fact known, but the specifics are hard to come by. So, how did Palpatine do it? How did he get away with the murder of his entire family? And bigger yet, why was this the act that convinced Plagueis that Palpatine was the perfect choice for an apprentice, especially when the Sith Lord did not want an apprentice in the first place? All of this will be revealed in today's video. Before we begin though, if you could take the time to leave a like on the video, that would mean the world to us, as it's a simple click for you, but massively helps us. Anyway my friends, let us begin. We must begin any murder case as anyone would, that being motive. The why behind the murder. Establishing the motive won't be difficult at all. There are many chapters in the book devoted to showing Palpatine's distress in his current living situation. Born into the house of nobility, Sheev Palpatine was treated differently his whole life by his mother and father. His father though, specifically, Sheev was indeed a different boy, and his father hated him for it. According to Kasinga Palpatine, his father, he could tell the boy was different the second Sheev was born. So much so that he attempted to swaddle him that very day, murder his own son. There was something wrong about the child, something off, something that made him vile and dangerous. Amazingly, the infant was able to break free from his father with a strength that was impossible for his side. From that day forward, Kasinga thought of his eldest son as a monster, and he treated him like one. The two bickered and fought constantly about pretty much everything, with Sheev eventually starting to act out as a way to get back at his father and his reputation. He knew that the only thing Kasinga cared about was the public image of House Palpatine. Kasinga would try to placate his son by doing and buying things for him whenever he wanted, attempting to keep him happy for a time and not to act out. But Sheev would later reveal to Plagueis that he knew that these were never gifts, but bribes. Kasinga never truly disciplined Sheev either. He was terrified of him. He neglected him and would pay him off to behave correctly. He always knew inherently that there was some latent dark power behind his son's eyes, one that he feared and one that he wished to avoid. Anytime Sheev would get in trouble, Kasinga would dip into the Palpatine's vast wealth and pay off anybody necessary. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information about Palpatine's mother or siblings. However, it's safe to assume that she aided and abetted this behavior from Kasinga, as she never once came to Sheev's defense or tried to talk her husband down. The only thing that Sheev respected about his parents was their money and the influence they had on Naboo. But even through this, he saw his father as weak. Kasinga only did the bare minimum to keep House Palpatine in nobility, never trying to climb the ladder of social or monarchical society. Sheev believed that House Palpatine could be great, the most powerful nobility on Naboo, but his father was a political boot kisser. Even he begged the elite. The straw that broke the camel's back came when Sheev had decided to teach his father a lesson, sabotaging an entire political campaign of an individual who Kasinga was supporting. He did this by going behind his father's back and tipping off Plagueis about all the political strategies. Plagueis, under the guise as the wealthy Higo Damask, was trying to get the Naboo royalty to sign a treaty, one that would basically cause what happened in the Phantom Menace to be legal, giving the Trade Federation more power. Kasinga's party was running against this bill, hence all the political subterfuge, and Plagueis and Kasinga becoming enemies. His father was growing suspicious about Palpatine though, and decided to basically keep Sheev under lock and key, despite the fact that he was now 18. He ordered that Sheev and Higo were not allowed to see each other, and he prepared to ship his son off-world to an academy to get rid of him permanently. Upon learning this, the young Palpatine was furious and confronted his father aboard their family's vessel. It was here where they had their most heated exchange ever. In this fight, Kasinga Palpatine literally told his son that he hated him and had always hated him because of how strange and abnormal he was. An atrocity, an abomination. Sheev bites back that Kasinga only hated him because he knew that his son was better, more powerful, smarter. The Palpatine patriarch goes as far as saying that he wished he had killed his son from the start, to which Sheev challenges him to do so now. His father, Kasinga, completely blind with rage and out of his mind, attempted to move towards his son and strike him. But then, it finally happened. Kasinga took a step in Palpatine's direction, only to be hurled back against the bulkhead. Nursing an injured shoulder, Kasinga looked suddenly like a trapped animal, his eyes wide with surprise and fear. He made a move to strike the handplate and open the hatch, but Palpatine thwarted his effort without raising a finger. Twisting violently around, Kasinga fell over one of the acceleration chairs, bloodying his face as it struck the armrest. "Guards!" Kasinga shouted. But the word had barely left his lips when the bulkhead against which he had been slouched buckled inward, heaving him face first to the floor and driving the breath from his body. Palpatine stood, rooted in place, his hands trembling in front of him, and his face stricken. Something stirred behind his incandescent eyes. He heard the pounding on the hatch and whirled. "What have you done?" It was his mother's voice, panicked. "What have you done?" Kasinga pushed himself to his knees and began a terrified retreat, leaving smears of blood on the deck. But Palpatine was advancing on him now. "If the Force birthed you, then I curse it," Kasinga rasped. "I curse it." "As I do," Palpatine growled. The hatch began to slide too, and he heard the voice of the guard. Palpatine pressed the palms of his hands to his head. Then, an eerie calm streaked to the hatch, pulled the surprised guard through the threshold, and tossed him clear across the cabin. Raising his face to the ceiling, he shouted, "We're all in this now." This was a passage from the Darth Plagueis novelization. The passage cuts off after this, and we never learn exactly what occurred afterwards, and how Palpatine murdered his entire family. But we do know that, like a scene straight out of a horror film, the dark side manifests in the young boy, and he kills his family without ever touching them. Every single one of them, using nothing but the violent storm of the dark side to do his bidding. Despite never being trained, the soon-to-be Sidious manipulated the Force in powerful ways just by his raw emotional state alone, showcasing drastic potential. Sidious would call the only person he had confidence in, as for one of the first times in his life, he was afraid. The only person he could trust was his friend Higo Damask, begging his friend to help him cover up the murders. What's fascinating is Darth Plagueis up until this point had not been sure if Palpatine was Force sensitive or not, since Plagueis could not sense him within the Force. But now, Plagueis was certain, and more than anything, he had invested so much time and effort into him that he was clearly more powerful than he ever initially anticipated. Higo pulled some strings and made sure that all the evidence of Palpatine's murders were destroyed, sending the ship they were flying in into a nearby star, incinerating it. With all the evidence literally pulverized, Palpatine was once again scot-free, albeit if not a little shaken up about what had occurred. All of this culminated to the ultimate moment where Lord Plagueis would dub him Darth Sidious. Plagueis would declare that he had abandoned love completely by this choice, the thing that he had always wanted from his father, and that he would only ever be accepted by the individuals who he held power over. The death of Palpatine's family was a gruesome one covered up with money and influence. These applications of the Force are not often shown, but they do exist. While the details of the murder are still left scarce, we know that their mangled and disfigured bodies tell a horrific story.